for those
All
who
right.
couldn't attend.
Yeah, so thank you for that reminder. So everyone, we are recording as a first up. Thank you everyone for being here tonight for Evanston Community Foundation's nonprofit series. Thank you to all of you community partners for everything you're doing in Evanston during this a myriad of crises, right? Thank you to staff members who put this on, Jennifer Moran and my colleague Charlotta. Thank you. I see Judy Kemp here, a longtime a board member and a former board member. I see Todd Weiner. I'm looking through here to see Jean Servillo, who's a board member. So thank you to ECF board and staff and all of you who do such tremendous work in the community. So the Evanston Community Foundation is here to help Evanston become a more just, vibrant, inclusive, equitable community. And we do that by pulling people together in the collective to work towards that mission. We do that through grant making, and those grant decisions are made by community members. And we do that through building leadership and training. And we train each other, we learn from one another, and sometimes we come together so that we can learn from leaders in the field. And tonight we are welcoming one such leader. Sherry Quam Taylor, thank you so much for Sherry for adapting. I know when we talked about this workshop, it really was a different world.
Life was different a year ago.
Life was different.
It was. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much for adapting, and not only adapting to this online format, but adapting, some of what we're going to cover, because it is indeed a different world. So tonight we're going to be talking about how we're going to move into 2021. I don't know about you, but I am over 2020. So it feels good for one night to talk about 2021, to move forward with a funding model that includes more unrestricted and charitable donations. And I think this is such a time where we can talk about unrestricted donations and how that equips us as nonprofits to be able to be nimble as organizations and in our service to community members. So Sherry teaches nonprofit leaders how to pivot from a heavy dependence on program and government and event gifts into securing large investment level donations. I love that word investment, because it really is an investment in our future, from individuals specifically, so that they can fund their missions. The leaders she works with are experts in their fields. When it comes to individual donor fundraising, they've just never been trained on how to do it. And so it feels uncomfortable and frustrating. And so she's going to help us learn the exact steps to move into mid and major level gift activities, so that you're going to feel comfortable and not dreading those asks. And that those asks will ultimately fully fund your mission for the long haul. And so she does this locally and nationally. And thank you so much for being here with us tonight, Sherry.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to my neighborhood, speak to my community after doing so much work all over the country this year, which has been fun too. But I was extra excited to speak specifically to a lot of people who I know are in Evanston this evening. So I'll just jump in if that's okay, Becca. Okay, everything looks okay?
Please do. Everything looks good.
Okay, I'm going to roll here. So couple little housekeeping. Feel free to ask a question in the chat. I'll do my best to watch for it, but I also will make sure that I've allowed some time for Q&A. I don't have anything else planned tonight. So even if you have a question that's burning in your heart, I'll hold on and make sure that it gets answered. So I agree with you, 2020. I want it over. I'm looking at 2021. So that's what we're looking at tonight. Now, as I've gone on the journey of 2020, and as a lot of organizations have reached out to me and have had this like, we needed more flexibility. We needed a bigger reserve. We needed a bigger cash balance. I needed more unrestricted funding to make it through, right? And so a lot of the reflection has really been on that funding model. And gosh, did we set it right in the first place, right? And have the activities tie to that. And so I want to talk about some ideas, some wins, some case studies, a bunch of stuff I want to really present to you tonight so that you can start thinking about what does the future of funding look like for your organization. Maybe where can you make small tweaks? Where can you make really big, like this is it, I'm going in this direction. So I'm going to jump right in. I'm going to talk fast. I get really excited when I talk. So here we go. So as Becca said, I'm Sherry. I live here in Evanston with my 2 teenage daughters who are my coworkers these days. They go to ETHS. I'm a national coach. She already mentioned that. I started this methodology that actually I'm going to share a bit with you tonight after I left corporate over a decade ago and became a fundraiser and was like, oh my goodness, what have I gotten myself into? And had success with it pretty quickly and tripled a nonprofit I was working for. And I want to share with you a little bit about how I used the strategy and the plan that I did back then, even today. I got into this and started coaching and teaching like I am here tonight because I just realized my approach was actually a bit different than a lot of the advice that even I was getting or that I could find in books. And it really was because I focused my model on aligning my time with the dollars and really creating a financing plan. That's what I call your development plan that you actually can reach and achieve. And also, typically fundraisers are doing a lot of things. So you don't have tons of time to be, or I should say not enough time in a day to actually accomplish everything. So everything you are doing has to be pointed at revenue. And so since then, I really have helped organizations move into those strategic 4, 5, and 6 figure gifts from individuals. Now, my goal today is that you'll learn a couple things that are not going to sound right now like fundraising, but I'm going to tell you they're going to lead to money. So I want to talk about how overhead and your budget are actually your best secret weapons in fundraising. I had a podcast guy joke the other day. He's like, you lost me on budgeting. Like everyone's hanging up. I'm like, hold on. Let me tell you how your budget can help you raise more money. I want to talk about what you should be doing right now, right? Especially if you're short on time, you're that lone fundraiser, or if it's just like, this has just been exhausting. What do I do going forward? I want to share a couple things that my students were doing right in 2019 that actually made them super strong in 2020, and things you can start doing now to make you even stronger as we move into 2021. So let me tell you a little bit about myself and how I'm going to tie this into the advice I'm going to give you today. And I want to do a quick flyover of how my methodology works and parts you can take from that this evening by talking to you a little bit about my own approach, and then also one of my students, Trey, who's having an amazing year. Actually, just talked to him today. So 2010. If you recall, it wasn't our best year either, right? Following 08, 09, jobs and houses and the whole 9 yards. That was the year that I left my corporate position and joined a nonprofit that was near and dear to my heart. And I'd left my established career because I had gone on a trip to India to work with this organization and just, had one of those life-changing experiences. I've thought so much about that time here in 2020 because it's really caused me to look at what worked back then that actually is working now in these difficult times. And there's some similarities in the challenges we've had. And so I entered this world of the nonprofit sector and had, zero connections and little network to call on. And I was not short of passion or vision. I'm going to tell you that. I needed everybody on my train and giving and, friends, family, everybody. And we did all the things that a lot of groups who come to me today, are doing: the 5Ks, the appeals, the events, the like semi-celebrity endorsers, right? But we still needed more money and we needed larger donations so that we could actually invest in our growth. It felt like we were kind of stuck. We were just on this spin cycle. The bigger problem was I didn't know how to do that because, well, I'd never been in fundraising before, right? I could kind of figure out some of the things, but I didn't know how to strategically move donors into their best gift. This was also the time where everyone told me, oh, hold on, individuals are not going to give right now. Like, the economy is too bad. They're not going to give, right? That's what everybody told me. And so at the end of the day, we weren't fully funded and we felt really stuck. And so I set out on this journey, and really my entrepreneurial spirit and my business background had really, I kind of said, okay, I got to dig deep into really understanding what does it take to really fund a nonprofit? What does it look like to be fully funded? Now, quickly, I knew that was unrestricted. We needed the majority of our gifts to be unrestricted. And gosh, we needed some larger gifts so that we could really feel that on the bottom line every year. But the money wasn't the only thing, right? I knew there got to be a better approach to planning. I call it a financing plan. How are we going to finance the work we want to do? There had to be a better way to approach that so that we could be fully funded every year. And so while at first I thought, well, I've never been a nonprofit, and up to that point, I kind of felt like it was a little bit of a disadvantage. But looking back, and even in this time, I realized what a gift that was because I had such a beginner's mindset going into the work. And so I realized quickly I wasn't alone in this. 77% of nonprofits have not hit that $1 million mark. And I know the awesome work those of you who are under that threshold are doing. I know how you have served. You have shown up and served this year. 91% have not reached 5 million. We have depended on you of all years. We have depended on you so greatly. And so I am passionate about getting you the funding you need and helping you learn how to move into larger gifts and larger unrestricted gifts so that you can blow past these statistics, right? So here's the thing, why I tell you this story today. I never bought into that concept that nonprofits should be able to do more on less. You should be able to, serve more people, pivot your programs, go online, double what you're doing, add a new program, and figure out how to do it on less. That doesn't make any sense to me. That's a little bonkers to me, to be honest. And so I never kind of bought into those misconceptions, and I did things differently. I embraced risk. Right? It was calculated, but I embraced it, right? We tried things. We spent money on things that helped us make money. I didn't subscribe to the traditional overhead fear. We weren't heavily dependent on volunteers. We paid people because we needed it done. And we probably ran the nonprofit a little bit more like a business than a nonprofit in so many different ways. And I got tons of bad advice really rooted on, hold on, that's not how this works, right? A lot of those things that we still hear today and that I've heard this very week of donors don't want to pay for overhead. Donors aren't going to give if you have too much money in the bank, don't have too much money in the bank. Or my favorite, have the event when we had events, have the big gala, have it be the best in the community, but see if you can get it for free. So don't spend any money on it, right? Like, these things don't make sense at all when we're trying to grow and scale our business that are solving world problems sometimes, right? So I didn't take any of that advice. And what I did was I created a true financing plan for the organization that actually empowered us to be fully funded. And then I aligned every hour I spent on fundraising with a high ROI model that I'm going to share with you today, so that I wasn't on that spin cycle that so many fundraisers get on, and sometimes are forced onto, right? When you're a development director and it's like, do these things and do these 82 things correct, right? And so I like to tell this story, and frankly, I've told this story in all of my webinars this year, because I believe that my approach to fundraising is different in general, but I really think it's a unique perspective here in 2020. That organization I worked for tripled in 18 months. And so I realized, gosh, I think I can come alongside other groups and help them through this journey. And so the number one thing that I find that keeps nonprofits from being fully funded, having enough money to do all the things you set out to do in the first place, is believing some of these old sector misconceptions and then trying to figure out the fundraising plan within that framework. And that type of approach and financing model like if it's not set up correctly in the first place, you're going to set yourself up for failure. And you're never going to quite reach that goal. And it always feels reactive. Or you might have some success or some moderate success. And so, gosh, if there's anything 2020 can do for us, it's that we can put a lot of those misconceptions in the past, because now we know better, and we know that we need to run our businesses different to do more with more and not do more on less. Okay, so I'm going to dig into these first two topics that I actually really love talking about. So here's these secret weapons I was telling you about. First thing I want to talk about, and I'm just going to hop right up on my soapbox. If you follow me on LinkedIn, you'll know I've been talking about this, I don't know, maybe since March. Overhead. This is your secret weapon. It is not a bad word. I love this word. I love the word overhead. Here's what I mean. If we're going to grow, we have to spend time and money on all three areas of our organization, right? We know that. Our programs, our admin, our fundraising. We know that in growth years, we're going to spend different amounts on different things. It's okay if we have a year where we're spending 20% on fundraising, if we can show that by doing that, within a couple of years, we're going to be spending this on program. So I will tell you, my students who have I'll say eagerly or felt risky, but like really invested all the way across the board, were really strong through 2020. Now, here's what I mean about this, and here's why I'm talking about this today on fundraising. When we think about spending in all three areas and growing in all three areas, if we're squeezing fundraising down and squeezing admin down, we're never going to have the tools and that more we need to do more, right? And so even when I'm budgeting, it's very easy for any of us to say, well, yeah, I would double the amount of people we're serving. I would double the waiting list, of people who need our services. It's very easy for us to kind of think through programmatic types of growth. But I would also say to you, we have to make sure we're carving a greater piece of the pie for that admin, right? What is that infrastructure that I need to make sure it can sustain the program growth? And then what do I need to spend money on that helps me raise more money so I actually can do the above? And when you don't invest in all three, when we're in that scarcity mindset, when we're listening to the voices of programs need to be over 90, when we're listening to that, it really leaves you vulnerable to a funding plateau. So when I hop on somebody's 990 and I look at the trajectory and it's kind of pretty steady, I immediately know what's being spent on the budget. It leaves us landlocked when opportunities come our way. We can't take advantage of that. I don't have enough unrestricted cash. I don't have it. I can't take advantage of that new staff member or this new program or this new opportunity that's come. And the worst thing is, it really it leaves us kind of in times of crisis. It leaves us open to risk, right? And so that's what we've felt this year. So here's what I want to move. I want to share with you a case study from my student Trey, and show you how he used this overhead concept and then budgeting, those two secret weapons I'm going to talk about, in fundraising to raise more money. So Trey came to me, I guess last year, I guess it was. It's weird. It's like November next week or something. I'm so confused. They had lost a pretty significant lead gift for their organization, and they're over $1 million. And so it was actually not a fault of their own, but they lost a lead gift, right? They were too dependent on one source of revenue. They had a history of spending way too much on programs. Everything was going to programs, and they couldn't build their infrastructure. They also knew they had a lot of really great donors, but they knew they weren't giving their best gifts. They knew it, right? And so the challenge is, Trey is actually an awesome relationship building guy. He's a clergyman. And so he said to me, I'm kind of just guessing, like, I kind of know enough to be dangerous, but I also don't know what I don't know, right? And so when it came to individual major gifts fundraising, he felt like he was leaving a lot of money on the table. Now, revenue 3 years prior of the organization that Trey is working for was on a trajectory that none of us would want to see our organization's trajectory on. It was going downhill fast. And so what happened was, with the tools and approach and the new financing plan, Trey actually had a plan to replace and then exceed the money he's lost. He started securing his top level gifts. And today he attributes raising over 25% more than last year. So I always tell people, when you text me things and you tell me, like it's going to be on my next webinar, so here it is today. Here's why I tell you this. All of this, I'm building to this. This red arrow is when Trey started investing in admin and fundraising, right? He started investing in the tools and infrastructure he needed to raise more money. And this year is the first year the organization is ending with a surplus since 2016 in a pandemic, and not on the front lines, I'll also add. So the caution I'll give you, and you know, I love that there's board members maybe on the call today too, is the fear of, but we can't invest in admin and fundraising. We can't learn how to do these things. We can't invest in spending money to make money because we want to put as much into programs. I hear you. I want you to as well. However, they're putting more money into programs now because they spent more on admin and fundraising. So you have to look a couple years out and say, you know what, we might only put 75% into programs, but that means within 2 more years, we're going to be spending double in programs. And so I see it all the time that we kind of buy into these things, these misconceptions in the sector that actually handcuff us from growing our organization's funding. And so because of this, Trey now is almost doubled his individual giving. He's ending with a surplus. He also feels the freedom to invest in overhead. He hired staff, still grew, right? Consistently secures large gifts. And he knows how to attract donors, how to lead them to their best gift, and how to ask for what he needs. Now, I'm going to build on this. I'm building. Now, second secret weapon, budget. This is very important. Who knew I would love talking about budgeting so much? Here's what I want you to hear. Your budget and your need are two different things. So what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is there's a huge mindset shift that has to happen before you can start attracting larger individual donors, investment level donors. And what that is if I asked you today and I said, what's your budget, right? A lot of times I get, well, if we had the money, we would do this and we would need this, and kind of if we'd had it, right? Versus here's what we need to accomplish our mission. So oftentimes we're setting our budget based on either what is already pledged or what we know is coming in. And so we're already planning and budgeting in that scarcity mindset. And I'm telling you, 99% of nonprofits, it might be 100, I don't know. I say 99 because it's most people, are not fully funded because of their approach to planning and budgeting. Meaning that initial financing model is actually not set correctly. And so I would ask you to think about, and this is hard to talk about when you're like, wait a second, we're talking spending money when I need to be making more money, but hang with me here. What have you not put in your budget that actually might be keeping you from growing? It's a serious question, right? Is it technology? Is it program resources? Is it your branded look? Is it fundraising? Is it that donor management software? Is it, gosh, I'm weighed down by admin tasks and it is time to hire a VA? Is it financial processes? Is it, programmatic growth beyond the contract that we have? Is it creating great donor experiences? Is it a reserve fund, right? What are you not factoring in your budget and not raising to the need versus the budget? So why is this important? It's important because it's only when you have created a real, one of my clients calls this honest, you want an honest budget? I said, I want an honest budget. When you've created a real needs-based budget, that you can actually create a real development plan that hits that goal. And so often I always ask for the budget first, and the budget might say, well, we have I'll use round numbers, $1 million need, but there's no reserve. Their staff is dying. They're not investing in fundraising. They're not investing in admin. And they actually need to be raising to a greater need. And so your number of your budget is rarely what you're raising to. And so when you are raising to your needs-based budget, I should say, when this part is done right, you really move from that kind of squeak by budget that never really gets funded, right? It's always kind of feeling short and behind. You're always feeling behind the eight ball, to a real budget that actually reflects what your organization needs, that helps you raise enough for programs, admin, and fundraising. It helps you build that reserve, and it allows you to reduce dependence on restricted gifts or events, or a lot of the things that we've realized we've been too dependent on these days. So the need also attracts. A lot of people ask me how to find donors. I say, let's attract them to us, right? It attracts investment level donors. I'm going to build on that. So what most people think, as I head into this solid fundraising section, most people think to find unrestricted, large, major donors, right? It's going to, like, that secret sauce is like, oh, I don't have the right board. They're not going to connect me to them, right? Or we need to change our board first. I need a different donor management software. I have to have somebody who, is endorsing us. Where is Chance the Rapper today, right? Or maybe you have to give them something, or we're tied to those percentages. I don't find that any of that's true, actually. And the reason is, if you think of who that individual donor is, think of who that investment level donor is that you're trying to attract. It's the entrepreneur, it's the business person, it's the community leader who has probably also had to sit down and ask for investments in their career. What they want is information. And what they want is for you to sit down and have that business person to business person conversation with them about the investment that they could make in your mission. So speak to them in that CEO dialect and sit down with them and welcome and open that investment level conversation. So that strategy, I painted that whole picture, if you tracked with me, and shared with you that story of Trey, because first it worked because he learned to create a real financial plan and budget that attracted larger donors. And I know that feels scary. It's like, you want me to raise my budget. Well, we're going to talk about that. Number two, he learned what to spend his time on that actually led to larger gifts, right? He aligned his income with the time and the ROI. I'm going to show you that pyramid. He didn't have to rely on his gut anymore because he knew exactly how to lead an individual donor to a yes. The key word on that is lead. So to secure and attract and find, whatever you want to call it, large gifts from individuals, this is also true sometimes with family foundations or corporations, you have to be able to share the need in investment level conversations. And no, you're not bad at asking for money. Everybody can ask for money. When we don't share the need of the organization, we are short selling the missions. We are short selling the work that you've done this year. So I want you confidently at the table sharing the need that your organization has. What does that look like?
I usually come in as my profile picture too, because I do the different class.
Oh, could everybody mute? So sorry. Thank you. Okay, so if we're removing, what does that look like when at the solicitation table? In that kind of, well, if we had the money to, here's what we need. Here's what that looks like. When that donor says, we all have this donor, so what do you need? So what do you need then, right? Instead of, well, we hope to be able to hit 1 million this year. We'd like to do this. We'd love to serve this. I would rather have you own the need with confidence. Thank you so much for asking that question. Actually, this year we have a $1.2 million need. Could I share with you what that looks like? And then I want to confidently walk through the financials, confidently walk through how you're funded, confidently walk through what that looks like, what you would do with their gift. You cannot have that confident conversation if you do not own your need and own everything from a planning and budgeting perspective. If that's not in line, you can't own that at the table in a solicitation. And an investment level donor feels it, reads it, hears it. They know it. They sniff that right out. And so knowledge is power in this situation, right? Now, for context, I already told you this is what I do, but here's what I want to say here. I do this 90-day accelerator all over the country. It's super fun working with people actually in a lot of states this year that have had tremendous stories. Here's why I tell you this. I can teach anybody to ask people for money, like the ask, the confidence, the, ooh, what are they going to say? What are they going to ask? Like all of those things, the tools in hand, that's the easy part, easy. 60 days of that is getting investment level ready so that you're attracting these donors. You're getting in the position so that you can have these investment level conversations, so that you can answer the tough questions. And so as we move into these fundraising concepts that I really want you to take this kind of mindset and kind of stand on this solid ground and think about how do you start moving into these types of things. That's where we're going to head right now. Now, some of you, thank you so much. You filled out a little pre-survey. I always like to take the temperature on the group just to say, hey, what are you hoping to cover? Just to make sure I can address those questions. And a lot of you asked, hey, how do I'm kind of like looking or trying to find the best way to fundraise during this time. And I would challenge you to not look at like, what is the unique and creative and kind of flash thing that I should be doing right now during COVID. And I would challenge you to think about this as perhaps it's an opportunity to make more of a structural shift in how you're approaching your annual planning, how you're approaching your annual strategy. That actually leads you to making a true shift in your funding model. It is more sustainable, it is more balanced, it has a higher level of unrestricted gifts. So that it's not just fixed in 2021, but in 2022 and as you grow. Okay, so I'm going to go through these 5 concepts. Do a time check. I'm talking fast. Okay, so let's talk number 1. I've said ROI a bunch of times about that model, so I'm going to dig right into this. Here's the problem. Most of us, I did it too. I can say us because I did it too. Spend way too much time and budget and energy and blood, sweat, and tears on fundraising efforts that lead to low dollars. It's getting in the spin cycle of the events and appeals and the race that we're on, right? I should try this. I should do a Giving Tuesday, all those things. Don't hear me say those are bad. They're not. But they have to be aligned with the top level donor strategy. Because on the flip side, we know the majority of our funding comes from the top part, that top part of the pyramid of our donor database. And so when we dig into the data and when we look at the giving trends, we know that if we're going to grow every year and if we're going to become fully funded, programs, admin, fundraising, we have to root our model, our fundraising plan, our financing plan, I've also called it, we have to root it in ROI, right? It has to exist. So in my world, when I'm approaching my planning every single year, I am making sure that my top 10 donors yield between 25 and 40% of my revenue. No more, no less. And then I'm looking at my top 30 yielding about 50 to 75%. And then the rest, of course, is, obviously we can do the math. Here's the thing. If most of your revenue does actually, stats show, come from the top part of your database, donor profile or donor constituency records, you have to make sure as a fundraiser, you are not spending the majority of your time, budget, and energy on the activities that are attracting and leading to only small donors. Again, I love the small donors all day long, but we can't spend all of our time there. And sometimes it feels comfortable down there, right? It feels like, it feels a little better to stay behind my desk and create that appeal or create that mailer. Or like, I don't really know how to move up into that. And so the reason I root all of what I do in this model is because the number one thing I hear, I actually heard it on the pre-survey, a couple people said that. This person said, not enough hours in the day. Like, I'm a one-person development department. I hear you. Your time, fundraiser, is the organization's most valuable asset. Full stop. So every hour you do spend on fundraising, it has to yield high ROI, right? And so I see this as a little bit more of a math problem, to where like staff and board actually must, like their time, especially your board, if they're going to give you an extra hour during the month or an extra 2 hours, outside of the board meeting, gosh, I even want their activities and their networking and what they're doing to really help point to yielding those largest gifts, which are really those relationship-based gifts, right? And so in this first section, your takeaway really is take a moment, run that number, right? Prioritize your time on the activities These are customized, these are deep, these are really kind of exclusive feeling, right? On those activities that actually lead to larger gifts. The problem and the pain and the feeling of all that is that sometimes, most of the time, a first-time large gift is 6 months to 24 months. Whew, that's a long time, you know? So anytime someone has asked me, how do I start my major gifts program during COVID? I say, well, it's today, because we're getting in the queue. Like, if anyone tells you that your mid and major level gifts program can be robust in a month, you need to turn around and run the other way. That's not what stats show, right? So prioritize your time, root your development plan in your time. Gosh, keep a timesheet if you have to. Oh, I hate that advice, but I might say that for 3 months. Keep a timesheet about it. Because this second concept I want to talk about, where quick fix is a lie, is really a problem in our sector. And I know there's been tons of content in 2020. I participated in it. But there's also a lot of content and resources that kind of tell you, like, you just do this, you just do this, you take this course. And it's kind of like, it's kind of easy, right? I don't think fundraising is easy. I don't think anybody on this call would say it's easy. I mean, we might hope it's true, right? So oftentimes what I see when we kind of hope this is the case, and there's got to be kind of that secret sauce or special thing to attract those donors or find them, oftentimes we do default to those transactional activities that we may see other groups doing, or, oh gosh, that felt like they raised a bunch of money doing that. But the challenge is that if you're going to grow and attract and cultivate this top part of the pyramid, I want all those dollars to be unrestricted, right? I want them rooted in relationships. And so I'm going to pause on this slide, because my students who went into 2020, where the majority of their funding came from what I call single source decision makers. Hey, Chris, can we talk? You have a direct dial, right? Less, vote by committee, that kind of thing. Again, important. I'm not telling you not to entertain that. But the majority of the funding is really rooted in single source decision makers, where you can have that unrestricted conversation. You are in deep relationship. You can pick up the call and talk about the need of the organization. And so your takeaway in this section would be, think about where you can be prioritizing those single source decision makers, right? Sometimes I'll even make a little field in my donor management software so that I can make sure that I'm focusing, and it's not too where 90% of your funding is coming from foundations. And gosh, I hope the funding criteria doesn't shift this year, or, oh, yep, this is in the news, so now it's shifted over here and we aren't going to get that funding that we've gotten for 5 years, right? So make sure you're spending your time on the single source decision maker, investment level leading. Now, what I find, and I actually took a big survey this summer, what I found when, I guess what I'll say is, I asked fundraisers what they wanted the most help on, as I was just kind of digging deeper this year. And it really came to individual major gifts, not rocket science, right? And I found that a lot of fundraisers, because the majority of fundraisers are coming from a different career or a different part of the organization, and have kind of found themselves in fundraising. Thank you. And so I feel pretty good on how to do grant applications. I think I can create an appeal. It looks great. I think I can design a campaign, an event. But the mystery around, how do I lead a donor to their best gift? And how do I move someone who mailed us a $1,000 check, and I kind of see down the road they're writing a $10,000 check? How do I actually lead them to that point and to that decision, right? And so your first step is to get really clear on 2 things. Everything I teach is rooted in this. Maybe if you're writing something down tonight, this might be what you want to write down. My goal is that you would lead your donors to give their best gift to your organization, and that they would give that gift every year. So if you pause and think for a moment, if all of your donors were giving their best gift to you, that'd be a game changer, big game changer, right? And then you have them in that cadence of giving every year. That is what I'm talking about. So if this is a $50 a month donor and that is their best gift, I want to serve them deeply and show them what impact their gift is making. But in my example of someone just kind of sending that $1,000 check, that's not their best gift. We have some work to do because I want their best gift. So if you're going to think about moving into securing their best gift, you actually have to lead them through that investment level conversation we've been talking about to really help them say yes, right? So we think of that CEO dialect or that kind of stakeholder conversation. And so there was even like a question about saying like, hey, we're doing pretty good, but our individual campaigns are kind of yielding small gifts. I love this statement. It says, we're really clear on our systems for campaigns, but major donors should feel like a crapshoot. I love that. So here's what I'm talking about. Because to attract those top 30 and to have it not be the crapshoot, I haven't heard that word forever, you have to lead them through customized experiences to the ask and to their decision. It has to be exclusive. It has to be really rooted in their mission for giving. And I want you to hear that you actually have way more control of the gift size and the timing than you think, if you lead your donor to the yes, right? So I could spend a whole hour on talking about the nuances of creating great donor experience plans and spending the time customizing those for your top 30 donors. Oh gosh, Sherry, that sounds crazy. That sounds like you want me to spend my time on that? I do, if it's going to yield between 50 and 75% of your revenue. I really do, right? So your takeaway here would be, you have to make those strategic chess moves toward the ask. I want all people on that top 30, top 50. I want those one-on-one asks, in-person solicitations. Let me rephrase that, or Zoom. I had to eat my words in 2020 when I used to tell people, don't make asks on Zoom. Make asks on Zoom. It's happening. It actually is working very well. I'll also just add, for those of you who are sitting here thinking, yeah, but I don't know any major donors, and how do I get my board to, open up their Rolodex or their network to people who might be donors? Biggest advice I'd have for you is create a great donor experience for each one of your board members. Solicit each one of your board members. You got to show them how it's done. The best way that I've found to get board members fundraising or participating in it is to demystify the process for them, because we have to remember, they're not fundraisers. They're also, lawyers, doctors, teachers, whatever they are. They're experts at something else. So in order to demystify it and to really give them confidence in the fact that you're not just going to walk in and ask their friend for money. No, you're not going to do that. You're actually going to serve them, and it's actually going to be really warm and wonderful, and the solicitation is going to be amazing, and it's going to feel great. And then you're going to report back to them and knock their socks off, and they're going to say, oh my gosh, nobody else we give to does that. You got to do that to your board member first to build the confidence that you're going to treat their network like that. Fourth, don't settle. I love this topic. I know I said that already. Here's what I want to talk about: money left on the table. This has been very true during COVID. So I see so much money left on the table when we as fundraisers decide ahead of time what the best gift is for a donor, right? Like when we say, oh, they can't give that. I don't think they can give that, right? Sometimes what we think is like, well, at least I got my colleague to give 5,000, but please don't offend them. Like, let's just be happy with the 5,000, right? Or here's a COVID one. I know they gave 20K last year, but like it's COVID. So can we just ask them for 10? I don't want to offend them, right? I hear that so much this year. The next time you're tempted to make that decision on the size gift your donor can give, you have to really pause and look what's behind that as a fundraiser, right? It might be some mindset work here, because when you don't commit to sharing the financial need, or where I started in this, owning the need and asking for the need is actually a symptom of a way bigger problem. It might mean maybe as a fundraiser, you're just not confident in what you're sharing, or like you're worried you're just not doing it right? Like, I've had that before. It could be, which is a big problem, maybe there's so few prospects, right? Like you don't simply have enough donors in the pipeline that, gosh, we got to get any gift. Like we got to get any gift. So like, let's not offend them because we need that 5K, or how are we going to do payroll or whatever that is, right? So it's a pipeline issue. It might be that you're just uncomfortable with asking. And so sadly, you're underselling your mission for far less than its impact. And gosh, if there's a year we should not be doing that, it's this year, right? So I want you to release the pressure of like finding the donors and like not offending the donors. And I just want you to present the need, right? You don't have to make the financial decisions for your network. At last I checked, I don't have access to my donors' bank accounts. They might be doing great, right? Don't make the decision. Your job is to present your need, and your need and mission is worthy of being supported in a non-pandemic year and a pandemic year, no matter what you do. If you're frontline or if you're not frontline. Arts organizations, listen to me right now, who have had to stop programming, your mission is still worthy of being supported this year. Sure, the ask might look a little different, but you're still on mission and you haven't gone anywhere, right? Okay, number 5, watching the clock here. Learning is not a risky investment. And so what I want to say here is, just because you are an expert, and that's the best part of my job, working with mission experts and program experts, and the fact that I get to learn from you every day, you might also still kind of struggle with the feeling of leading large donors through this. Like you've just never done it. It doesn't feel good. Occasionally people tell me they don't like fundraising. Crazy concept, right? So when I hear, oh gosh, I hate fundraising, I don't like asking for money, or my board doesn't know they're supposed to be helping, or all of those kind of comments I hear, I feel like this typically means, and when I dig a little deeper, this process is a bit of a mystery and I don't really know what to say. And because of that, like I don't know how to manage up and then equip and lead my board through this. So one more quick case study as we end here. This is Sandy, actually, she's in Texas. She's a wonderful person. I worked with her at the end of last year in 2019, and her organization's funding had stalled, I guess I'll say, because it's funny, donors didn't really understand what her organization's need was because they were so dependent on program revenue, right? And so a lot of us, our donors don't understand what we need. Are you 1 million? Are you like 10 million? Oh, they have no concept. Oh, I figured you're funded by the city. I figured you're funded by the state. They don't understand what you need, right? And so because of this, she could never raise enough money to have a cash balance to grow her programs. And she wanted to move into a second and third city. And so she's an absolute expert at her mission, but had never done major gifts fundraising. And so because of this, she defaulted to having a gala because she didn't want to go ask people for money, right? She wasn't having those investment level conversations. And so the asks were really happening at a gala. And I'm going to tell you right now, your major donors are not giving their best gifts if they're only giving at your gala. So when I talked to her in mid-February, we remember mid-February, it wasn't crazy yet. And she said to me, I feel a little weird because I have so much money in the bank. I love to hear those words, right? And so her overall revenue, when she learned how to pivot her planning into the top 30, lead with investment level gifts, start having those strategic donor conversations, attract large donors, she already grew her revenue by 70%. Her program and donations, was about 50-50 the year before. It tipped about 7 or 8%, right? And so, but it's okay, that's not that much, Sherry. But what does that add to the bottom line? That's an extra over $200,000 unrestricted flexible cash. And so when we look at what did investing in learning, investing in admin and fundraising, like what did that do for Sandy here in 2020 when we had no idea what 2020 would look like? Well, she went into 2020 with the largest reserve fund in her life, right? She felt like weird she had so much money. She had confidence to replicate her program. She went into 2 new cities. She greatly reduced her dependence on program revenue, which is great. She has more unrestricted cash. And she greatly reduced her dependence on event revenue because she had moved, hear me on this, she had moved her event donors, their asks up and out of the event and pre-solicited them. She even doubled her event money that year. But now that her event went away in 2020, she has them as annual fund donors. So they've stayed steady giving. And so when you do all of this right, and I'm going to land the plane and get to the questions here, you really can fully fund your organization each year. You know, I have groups that are funded at month 6 during this year, right? And are really able to sit back and think strategically because they are less restricted, or excuse me, less dependent on those restricted funds. They've gotten time back because they've really aligned it with those investment level gifts. And they're actually able to maximize their board's participation because they've aligned their board's activity with that same pyramid I showed you. And you can really create a sustainable organization, right? And so I want you to think about, as we head into 2021, what can you stop doing so that you get that off your plate, so that you can start doing the activities that actually help you reduce dependence, right? And that actually start creating more unrestricted revenue to grow your organization. So in my opinion, the best investment you can make is really learning how to move into those relationship-based gifts and knowing that it takes time. This is not a quick fix. If it was a quick fix, this would be the year I would tell all of you, right? And so I want you to be a constant learner. I've taken that to heart this year too, investing in myself. Align your overhead dollars with learning the skills and spending the money on the things that are going to lead you to more money, lead you to unrestricted gifts, and thus reducing your dependence on all the things we talked about today. So as we move into Q&A, especially because I have so many Evanstonians on the call tonight, if there's ever been a year you've deserved the funding, gosh, it's been this year. And so I want to personally say thank you for how you've given to our community. Those of you who are in the general Chicagoland area or beyond, thank you for serving the way that you've served. It's just really been the most humbling time for me to serve the sector. So I just want to say a big thank you. And a big thank you to the Evanston Community Foundation for having me as well. So I'm going to try to open the chat here, Becca. See, I see a couple comments, and so I'm going to try to go there.
Let me know if you want me to read any, or
good.
If sometimes it's hard to, fly a plane and talk and do everything you're doing. So
sometimes I try to fly the plane and talk, and it's never a good thing at the end. So I just wait till the end now because I've done a lot of webinars this year. Okay. Will you receive the slides? I'm happy to provide the slides if that is something that people would like. And the recording, you can have the recording. How do you serve the lead donors without reinforcing the white saviorism narrative? Yeah. Here's the thing. My approach is that, so there's 2 things to this. A lot of times I'm looking at an individual donor strategy in 2 ways. There's a connecting strategy and then in leading the individual donor strategy. And so a lot of times when we think of even trying to have diverse boards, and sometimes people are like, well, our board doesn't, we have a very grassroots board. They don't have any connections, or they don't feel like they have any connections. My biggest advice would be to treat everyone as potentially that pathway to leading you to a relationship or an opportunity. And so a lot of times I'll even be leading a donor through a conversation that I'm just trying to get to a connector, right? And so I think that there's obviously, I lean heavily on communication experts in this time. There's been a wonderful, actually, woman I've been working with a group downtown that's serving Black youth and really helping with college scholarships. And her tone has been so interesting for me to learn from as we're leading donors and really moving from, in their case, a history of a very white donor database or donor profile into really helping more, all sorts of people be able to give to the organization. So I would say to that, there's a way to do it, but it's never going to be fixed if you don't root it in a case statement or your organization's own kind of guidepost on how we're talking to donors and how we're conveying the need in a very dignified way. Will you share examples of great donor experience plans? Okay, yeah. So here's what I would ask. When I am creating donor experience plans, I start with one question. I start with, what is that donor's mission for giving? Here's a really wild example of extremes. So we have the corporate donor who wants the PR, wants wants everybody to know they're giving, and that's okay, right? They have a different mission for giving than perhaps an elderly philanthropic couple who has followed the organization forever, and they might be trying to instill a legacy of giving. They want their kids to see that and their grandkids to see it. We are going to serve those two donors in two totally different ways. And so let's take the latter one, right? The philanthropic couple. An example that I give often, here's an example, would be maybe that couple also is somebody who comes to an event and maybe gives $5,000. That's nice. I'll take that, right? But we also know they're giving larger gifts down the road. And so what I might do is, after they give that gift, a really important thing that I do is I use the thank you, the impact report, telling them how their gift's going to be used. I use that to lead them to the next meeting. I'm doing a calendar here to lead them to that next meeting, so I can make sure that I have got them in the path to give the next year. So what I mean by that is, in the thank you, I might say, Chris and Sue, I'm reaching out. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Impact, impact, impact. The last line of that thank you, I'm going to say something like, I'm passionate about sharing with you the impact of your gift, and I typically reach out and report to people in about 90 days. So I'll be reaching out to you then. Oh, so I just led them and I just told them what I'm going to do next. So what I want to do is get them back, and in 90 days, I want to reach out and say, hey, I told you I'd be reaching out to share with you what your gift's been doing. It's been a wild year. How's Friday to hop on Zoom for 15 minutes, and I'll have this core member with me, and I'd love to share with you the impact of your gift. All of that reporting all year long, what you're doing in March, what you're doing in June, what you're doing in September, leading up to that next ask, is serving their mission for giving. It's being, kind of leaving the ego at the door and listening to the questions they're asking. What is going to keep them from giving their best gift? And then you create the donor experience based on that. I hope that's helpful. But you want to ask with a number in mind. Not always. Actually, I don't. So I'm talking to individuals here, right? Foundations, a lot of times it's like, this is the price, or, well, send me some options. I actually use a number of tools and solicitations where I'm more leading them to kind of an array of gifts and asking them if they would be a top 30 donor or a top 10 donor, or I don't know if you can, but I'd love to invite you to raise your gift. Because when we go in and say, I'm going to ask for a 10, like, is that their best gift, right? And so I find that money is left on the table, even in that instance, when we're deciding what their best gift is. Christine, how do we help? So we want to talk about there's some questions about the board getting over that fear of introductions. I'll just reiterate on the modeling, I guess, of the donor experience to the board. And this is frustrating too, because we want the board just to be like, oh, here's the network. I've set up coffees for you. It's every Friday for the next month, right? We'd love that. I really do find that if we are not showing them how it's done, there's always a little bit of I always get a look on someone's face like, really, that's the answer? But I'm going to tell you time and time again, if they are fearing the introduction, I say, why are they fearing it? Are they afraid what I'm going to say to them? Do they think I'm just going to walk in and be like, hi, Tom's on our board, I need $10,000? Do they think I'm going to be pushy? Do they think I'm going to say the wrong things? What is it, right? So I want to do everything I can to show them by doing it to them that actually when you're serving your donors through a great donor experience, it actually feels great. It feels great. I want you asking your board members. I want you thanking your board members. I want you reporting back and showing them. I will even tell you to tell them what you're doing. So a lot of times I'll do a board training and I'll say, hey, by the way, I've told your ED or DD, I've told them to give you each a donor experience. And I've told them to solicit each one of you one-on-one because I want you to see how it's done. Only then sometimes will they start opening their network. I see it over and over again. It's not the quick fix answer you want, but that's what I've found to be successful. Okay, I think I've covered a lot of the questions that were in the pre-survey. I'll read back through them, and if I didn't, Becca, I'll certainly reach out to that person and make sure that the question has been answered. But I tried to cover a lot of that in just the initial presentation.
Any other questions? You can be brave and just use your voice too.
Yeah, go ahead and ask. Or if not, you know where to find me. I'm on LinkedIn every day. I use that as a big platform to share lots of things. So please feel free to follow me over there or shoot me an email. Or I've got lots of free playbooks on my website too that hopefully will be useful to anybody here. And yes, we're going to share the slides.
All right. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I would love to just hear some more examples of what that donor experience could look like for different donors.
Yeah. Do you have anybody like in mind or like a persnickety donor you're thinking of? Not that we ever have those.
I'm also new in development. And so a lot of our donors are going to be maybe in their 60s,
Yeah.
50s and 60s, who maybe have a relationship with one of our board members, give to a lot of organizations, and are giving us maybe a $500 gift, maybe sometimes a $1,000 gift, and we're trying to increase those and find new donors. And so I'm just, really curious about the different ways when you talk about a really great donor experience.
Yeah.
What does that mean and what can that look like?
Yeah. One tip kind of I think it might be a little bit tied to your question, which is a good one. A lot of times people will say to me, like, I can't, like, what's my reason for reaching out to them? It's kind of like, well, I sent them the thank you, and then I saw them at the X. And so like, why am I reaching out? It feels a little weird, right? And so one tip that I'll give, and I'll try to tie this to some examples. I just give this to a gal who I'm working with in Washington, D.C. Like sometimes I'll do these things to where I want those top level donors to feel like they are getting a very exclusive experience. Like I'm kind of not doing this with everybody else type of thing. And so one piece of advice that I give a lot of people is sometimes I'll do things like I might email them and say, hey, you know what, every Friday through year end, just in the morning, I'm doing quick 20-minute coffees to catch you up on this and this. I want to share with you how your gift's being used. And then last time you asked me about blah, 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 and I wanted to share with you. Would you have 20 minutes at either 9 or 10:30 on Friday? Lead the donor, right? Not let me know, lead the donor, right? And so then it feels a little like, oh, she's putting me in one of her Friday spots. Okay. Sometimes that wasn't pushy, right? But it was certainly leading them tied to an exclusive opportunity. You might have that board member on there, right? You might ask each one of your board members, hey, once a month, because hey, let's say there's 12 board members, I would actually like to facilitate a quick touchdown coffee with that one donor you brought because they've consistently been giving 500. We know there's giving capacity. The key is on that call, you're going to have that, you're going to talk mission, you're going to ask questions, you're going to write down the questions they're asking. And whatever those questions were, you need to know how you're going to lead them off the call to the next step. So I always say, like, if they said, yeah, you know what? Yeah, but I saw that I don't know, I'm trying to think of an example, like, really, I figured the state was funding all of that. Like, I don't know, it feels like I'm already paying for that with my taxes or something. Some of these kind of quirky misconceptions. You might say, you know what, you're not the first person I've had ask that. I'm actually going to pull together a little something. Or if there was a great article I saw on that, I'll shoot it to you here in the next week or so and let you know X. So the point of all of this is less about what is the creative idea. I suppose we could, brainstorm on creative ideas, but it's more like, how are we feeding what they value, why they're giving, their mission for giving. What is that thing you do that is like, oh, we got to give to them, right? I love, a lot of people are fearful of the CFO, the kind of person who's like, give you the numbers, what's with the percentage. I'm always going to have some sort of visual ready to go. Or I might say, well, wasn't really the point of this call, but if you really want to see a graphic representation of our budget, I'm happy to show it to you. What did that donor want? They wanted numbers. What are you going to do? How are you going to get to, this is how are you going to get to 1 million? How are you going to get to 5 million? Be ready. And if you don't know the answer, I said, great, fine. You know what? I'd love that you asked me that. I'm going to work on that the next month and do X. Lead him to it. Because whenever, even with the thank you, it's a perfect example of thank you. Thank you for your gift. Thank you. It's tax deductible. Bye. Then always the question is, well, now how do I get back in front of them? Well, if you told them what you're going to do, it's really easy to get back in front of them, right? So I would say, focus on figuring out early on. I will qualify a donor way longer than maybe people do. I don't know, because to me, way back in qualification and cultivation, you're really figuring out, is this a yes or a no, right? Because after you've kind of gotten to this cadence, when you ask, it's not really a yes or no anymore. It's a yes or a not maybe, or not yet, or maybe, right? We've kind of weeded all that out. Most important thing is that you actually can lead and you have way more control of that pacing than you think, right? And so, fast forward, you get into these strategies. I actually, with my financing plan, kind of tie my asks a little bit to the cash flow of the organization and try to figure out who I can move so that we aren't, dry in the summer and that kind of thing. It works great. I hope that helps a little bit, Anne. Okay, I see you've got your evaluation form on there, so that's great. Okay, anybody else? And feel free to unmute and or reach out privately. That's fine too.
Sure, I have a quick question, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So, unique situation that I've never been in before, where walked into an organization that, after a resurgence of new leadership and a major capital campaign, finds itself with 2-3 dozen donors that were first-time donors at 4 or 5, actually 5 and 6 figure levels,
Nice.
that hadn't given before. Now haven't necessarily become regular annual fund donors. So as far as that donor experience plan, any unique thoughts given that sort of landscape?
First of all, Clyde, everyone on this call wants that problem.
Right.
So congratulations on that. The most important, not knowing exactly the timing of when this happened, is, to me, the most important thing you can do is knock their socks off in reporting back on how their gift was used. My number one rule in thanking is exceed expectations. If they come back and say, you didn't need to do that, Clyde. Well, glory be, I didn't and I did, right? Because then your name and your phone number and your application, if it's applicable, is on the top of the stack. So if I'm you, I would exceed expectations in sharing with them how the gift is being used and the impact it's having on lives or whoever, whatever you do. I'm going to say this, and I'm saying it in love. The thanking bar is so low. The impact reporting to individual donors is so low that when you go up and above that bar, people are like, oh my gosh, I don't get that from other organizations. That gets you back in the path to the next gift and gets them liking you. Like, he was great. Wow, like that felt good to give that gift. Perhaps we should do it again. So that would be my biggest immediate response to you, because that's tremendous. that you've gotten such large gifts kind of as these first-time donors. Knock their socks off.
Thank you.
Sure. Good. Congratulations on that. People have been so, it's been so humbling to see how generous people have also been in 2020. It's really been remarkable to watch. Anybody else?
Going
I
on.
really
Oh, go ahead.
appreciate you having me and
Well, thank you, Sherry, for giving us your evening.
yeah,
and
absolutely.
for this fabulous workshop. I feel like I'll speak for everyone here to say that I feel like we're all walking away with just some great content, some great tips, whether we're professional development staff or board members. Some of us are both. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Happy to. Thank you.
And everyone has your contact information, so know that Sherry is local and she's here for you. I also want to, on the thank you train, I also want to thank Wintrust for sponsoring our whole workshop series. And so they have made it possible for all of these workshops to be free. I hit go a little too soon, so I apologize. I didn't mean to be rude, but I did put in the chat a bunch of links. So I want to make a few announcements. First, I promise it's a super brief evaluation, but we really do pour over that. So we'll share that with Sherry with, what was the most helpful, least helpful, and then we ask you to ask us make recommendations for what you'd like us to offer next year. So the program team's really going to be looking at that. So please fill that out. A few other announcements. Our next workshop is November 18th. That's it's titled Agile Techniques for Nonprofit Team Building. And that's really designed to help both boards and staff teams become more effective. So highly recommend that. So you can register online. I know a lot of you have registered for the full suite. So if you've already registered, you are set. Also, there's a link for Dance Marathon. So Dance Marathon, that's through Northwestern University. This is their Jordan year. They have been supporting the Evanston community for 23 years through the Evanston Community Foundation. And so they give more than $100,000 a year to support organizations through our grants programs. And this year, you probably know they also generally have a number of volunteer days where they go out in the community. This year, they've really reframed their volunteer opportunities so that you can apply for projects and have dedicated volunteer groups working with you for either all year or for tighter projects. Go to that link. They've only gotten a few, everybody gets so many darn emails. It's probably gotten past you, but they've only gotten 3 registrations. And they've got a lot, I think they have 1,000 dancers. I won't say they're all going to be volunteering, but they've got hundreds of Northwestern students who would love to help you with things like website design, coding, marketing and social media, writing, general tech support, a new online platform, data analysis, tutoring. So definitely fill that out. We're all really, hopefully, focused on the election coming up in a few weeks. I hope everyone has made a voting plan. But don't forget that we also have local elections coming up in April. And so a collective of organizations, I saw Pastor Neighbors here, the NAACP, ECF, Evanston Latinos, the League of Women's Voters, the ETHS parent group, I could go on, are all get together and offer the public service challenge. And so we're going to be offering this remotely this year. But if you or anyone else has been doing some soul searching and thinking about running for local office, whether it's school board or all of the alderman seats are up, alder people seats, please check out that link. You can go to our website and find out where those trainings are. They're going to be, there's a series of video, and then also like panel discussions, depending on what you're planning on running for. Also, I just want to make sure everybody knows about Evanston Care Network. I feel like the Evanston Care Network Pied Piper here, but if you haven't heard of it, please go to evanstoncarenetwork.org. This is the interactive directory of all programs and services that are offered in Evanston, whether they're nonprofit, government, businesses that have really adapted and they're offering services. So any programs that you have that are offered to people at low or reduced cost, please make sure that you're putting them on that platform and also keeping them updated, because it is the CRM, it is the database that the school social workers are using, that Evanston 311 is using, Amita Health, so evanstoncarenetwork.org. Any other, I'll open it up for any other announcements that anybody has that you want to know, what these, that you want 49 other people to know about. Anyone else?
I'll go. This is Daisy.
Go, Daisy, go.
This is Daisy. I'm the development director at Mudlark Theater. And this Saturday night at 7 p.m., Mudlark is hosting a live stream fundraiser. It's called Larkabout, and we are doing it telethon style. If you want to register to join us or just chime in at 7 o'clock on Saturday, the website you can go to, it's a one-stop shop website, is Larkabout, spelled LARKABOUT.givesmart.com, and I'll put that in the chat. Thanks so much.
Hi, I'll jump in too, and we've got a conflicting event happening with Daisy. Literacy Works hosts an event every year called A Book That Changed My Life. It's a storytelling event. It's really fun, and this year we're doing virtual edition. So if you want to join us, you can go to our website at litworks.org and find information and get tickets there.
So I'll jump in too. Hi, this is Juliette. I'm over at Piven Theater. We're actually lucky enough to get Ed Asner and Michael Shannon, and one of the women who graduated from our prison program, who are performing a virtual show on Halloween, but you can still buy a ticket and watch the show at your convenience at another time. So I'll put our website in the chat as well, but it should be really fun. It's actually about politics, and it's right before the election, and Ed Asner plays God. Of course he does.
So this is Alexandra Sosa with the Farm Worker and Landscaper Advocacy Project, and we are doing an event tomorrow from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. at Evanston Latinos. We are going to give like up to $3,000 per family. They have to be Latins, undocumented, and hit by the COVID-19. So our goal is to help pay for rent, utilities, and to give financial assistance. And this is thanks to the Evanston Community Foundation.
Anyone else? Wow, that was really exciting. I feel like I've got a lot ahead of me. Okay, I have to do one more, and it's not local, but I'm just going to say my cousin produced What the Constitution Means to Me, and it was and it is now on, shoot, I should have looked, I think it's on Netflix now. And if you, oh, Jamie's nodding her head, please watch What the Constitution Means to Me. It's really, really good. And I got to see it. It was the last time I was actually like in right before COVID hit. I got to see it live in Chicago, and then and now you can watch it from the comfort of your house. Any other announcements? Okay, Sherry, thank you. Thank you, thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it. Thanks to everybody for coming tonight.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you.